Wheeling one, but I do want to talk a bit about the novel, and we'll welcome you back because you were on the Zoo Pod. Maybe we'll talk a bit about the Zoo Pod.
I just want to talk about why vaccines are destroying the human race. So go.
Welcome back to the Giant Pod, Sean.
Hello. We're
Sean
going.
Powell.
We're going.
Yeah, we're on, man.
Wow. Okay.
We're on.
Awesome.
I don't like to do like. I mean, you often message me and tell me that you're listening to the podcast. I feel like you know the routine of this show and the format. I never like to sit there and be like, I have such and such today, and look at them and list out all this stuff. Right? Yeah. I would much rather just naturally get into a conversation.
Oh, okay.
And
no cigars and scotch then beforehand.
No. Okay. That'd be nice, wouldn't it, if we had the budget?
Budget. Yes.
Yeah. So I like to just get into the conversation, and we do all that embarrassing arse lickery later when you're not here.
That's all right. Yeah.
When I can sit here and do 10 takes and go, fuck, Harry, I'm getting burnt out. I don't know if I've got any more in me. Take 3 was good. Can't you put take 3 and 4 together? There's something in that. Fuck it, I'll do another one for safety.
I can't do this anymore. I can't sit at a table and talk for an hour. It's soul destroying.
You should see it once we've done podcasts.
Where's my agent?
Call my agent. Once we've done podcasts and everyone's had their lovely ego rub and conversation and they go home, me and Harry are sat here going through the tops and the tails.
How do we knock half an hour off that?
What do we tell them so that we never have to release this? Harry, name me a technical hiccup that happened. It's totally believable. I don't think that will happen to you.
No.
So you've been on the Giant Pod Zoom.
I have.
No, Zoo. Not Zoo.
Yeah.
Not Zoom.
Is that because it's a zoo of guests?
It's because it's a zoo of guests.
Right, okay.
And I said Zoom because of the world we live in.
The world we live in.
Everything's on Zoom.
Yeah.
How did you find that? Did you enjoy that?
It was brilliant. Yeah. I was especially happy sitting next to you, and you were just telling me every 10 minutes how drunk you were. That was really good.
Well, I'll tell you what was funny about that is that I was like trying to help Harry set up for that. It was a bigger, if you've seen that episode on YouTube, basically it was a group of us, former guests and new faces to the podcast, I think.
I think it was just me who was a new one.
You were the new face, yes. So it's former guests of the pod, plus Sean Powell. Yeah. And basically I was helping Harry set up, and it got to a point where we'd set up enough that he had it. And I went, all right, Harry, what do you want me to do next? He went, the only thing I need you to do now is to start getting pissed up. And that was like a red flag to a ball. And no one's ever like said to me before, like, okay, your mission now for this thing we're doing is that you need to be fucked up for it.
Yeah.
And so I went for it.
That was a good idea.
King Cronenberg.
Yeah.
I think that was Harry's sneaky way of trying to get the shadow product placement of Cronenberg, but Shadow Andy, unguarded Andy. I think he thought, I tell you what, if I get him really smashed, he'll unleash the fury on the pod.
I could sell this to someone in a pub for a $5. Political chicanery, drunk mayor.
I don't know another mayor in the world who's on YouTube
getting pissed,
knowing he's being filmed by multiple cameras at multiple angles. Gladly. Getting fucking fucked up.
Usually the camera's like on someone's belt and you're taking Saudi money, but not this guy.
Normally it's panorama where you see that stuff. But yeah, so that was kind of
that was a great time. And it was also like Freedom Day, which just turned out to be like, I don't want to wear masks anymore day. That was it.
It's like, we're all going to get it, aren't we?
Yeah.
That was a day when I think everyone realised it was like, it's not going away, is it? So
it's like a really bad cold.
Everyone do your shift.
Yeah.
Everyone do a shift.
Come on, chop.
Yeah.
Wild. Freedom.
Wild. Yeah. I was really nervous watching that pod back, actually.
I bet you were.
Because I don't remember the second half of it very well. Because James Lavers...
He just disappeared, didn't he?
He did disappear, bless him.
I think you turned to me at one point and said, like, is he coming back? And I was like, Andy, I don't know who he is.
Well, where's James? Because he just went, in my ear, he just went, oh, I've got to go, you know. And I thought he meant the toilet.
Yeah.
And so there was a moment, I remember, because he kept doing me little shots of vodka and stuff on the side. And that was like the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
But there was a moment I seem to remember where Eleanor got her sherry out.
Yeah, she
and
loves sherry.
I'd flicked that switch.
Yeah.
I was like, let's go. Get the sherry out. And then I remember us going, Harry following me around the theatre looking for James, who wasn't even in the building. But I don't know if it's still there, Harry. I don't know if you've got the footage somewhere. I wouldn't mind seeing it. Absolutely sloshed. Were you all in tow, or was it just?
No, you kind of disappeared for a bit, and then I heard you like banging toilet cubicle doors. I was like, again, this is the mayor.
Reveal it. He's not in here. James Lavers live on. Oh, where is he? That was funny. And there's a moment, I think, where there's probably a moment where you know. Of realization of like, Harry, I've just done all this shit. You filmed it, and he's not here.
Was he ever here?
Was he here? Was he here?
Yeah, no, that was a great episode.
Harry, I'm drunk. What's real?
Am I the mayor? Is this all just a marketing plan I devised a year ago?
Is this a dream? So yeah, we were talking about lockdown and how you used your time in lockdown in that podcast. Have you stuck to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I just did some writing before I came here. Yeah.
So your writing is not a novella.
No, it's a novel.
It's a full scale novel.
Well, I have nearly finished a full scale novel.
Right.
And I am sort of like starting to write another one. I was sort of planning another one, and now that's just turned into writing it. So at some point I'm going to have to go back and finish the old one.
Okay. Yeah. Was this not saying that your book is crap, but was this because maybe you'd lived with these characters in this story for so long with novel one that you actually really enjoyed the process of it?
Yeah.
You're really feeling that creative juice, and you went, oh, let me just get the basics of this next one down.
Yeah. It was a mixture of I'd had an idea for another thing, and also there was probably about a month where I was writing the old one and the juice wasn't really flowing as much. And from past experience, I know that you kind of need to give it a break then. Right. Otherwise, you'll just hate it and you'll never go back to it. So I just thought, okay, well, put it on ice for a bit, do the other one, and then get back in the game with the old one when you're ready. So.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. So in my head, I was thinking maybe this is like being giddy and being like maybe over enthusiastic, but actually, what that is a tactic.
Yeah,
to avoid writer's block or something.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Okay, so you go, all right, I need to step away. I guess it's like with a band and stuff, like we had this a lot. When you're listening to a mix of an EP or something, you can listen to it and listen to it and listen to it.
Yeah.
And you've lived with that song or those songs for so long, rehearsed, take. And then there's a moment where you go, we can't hear this for a week now.
You basically go, I don't want to hate this. So, and that will happen eventually.
Right.
With anything, if you just consume it enough, you'll hate it. So
right.
It's not a good idea. So it's for me, and I've had that so many times with other projects where I've just ground into it until I don't enjoy it anymore, and then I hate it, and then I give it up.
Right.
So I didn't want to do that with this one, basically.
Okay.
So.
And that's then just a waste of time, isn't
it? Yeah.
Or is it because?
Well, it's a go. You've had a go. You know, and it's practice every time. You get better. I think you do get better every time. I think that's the same with like music and stuff. I think I was listening to your podcast with the two guys who were in the operation, each their individual one, and I definitely got the sense of like they improved with every band they had. Yeah, and they got more serious with it. I've had that with writing. Right, like I give more of a shit on the the next one, basically.
And the next iteration.
Yeah.
That is interesting, because also there's no substitute for experience, as a lot of wise people say.
Yeah.
And so you now know, writing this new novel, this set of new novels, let's say, that, I'm not going to do that again and hate this.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Interesting. So what genre are you in?
Well, this is the
What
thing.
space are you in?
They're both quite different, actually.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Is that, again, is that one part of the tactic?
I think so, yeah.
So you go, okay, I'm writing a crime thriller. No subjectivity. I need to step back from this. Let me start writing that erotic novel.
So the first one was a sort of a mindfuck contemplative thing set in World War II
that
Germany.
mind-fucked me.
And the next one is 50 Shades of Grey, Part D. No. Anyway, the first one is, I don't know if there's actually a genre. I pitched it to someone once, the first one, and they came back to me with sci-fi, and that really took me aback. But
Okay.
I think what they meant was like really old-fashioned sci-fi, like H.G. Wells, where it's not like Star Trek. It's more like a satire on the world, but like with some freaky shit in there. Kind of like when they were first working out what sci-fi was, it was kind of like a sort of alternate reality sort of thing.
Okay.
But anyway, the first one is actually, it's like a period thing. It's set in the 50s, basically.
Okay.
And it's set in South America.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting, because they say, I've got two things to ask you, but they say write what you know, don't they? And so I'd have assumed
Don't know those two things.
Right? I'd assumed that your first novel would have been about things that you find really relatable or that you can call upon experience for.
Yeah.
So with this one, are you sat watching documentaries on South America in the 50s, or are you, how are you getting in, how are you building that world? And also the other thing I was going to ask you is, I do want to hear that pitch that you were talking about where people said this is sci-fi.
That's a sci-fi.
But we'll get to that
Yeah.
a bit later, because I want to understand.
So first of all, I've thought about how to sort of explain this without sounding really wanky and also not making any sense, but I don't think it is meant to be a kind of, this is what South America was like in the 50s thing.
Right.
I think it's more, I mean, for one thing, when I say South America, it's literally set in the Amazon. So it's in like the jungle, it's in the wild. It's so it's about going up the river.
Okay.
It's kind of like Apocalypse Now sort of vibes.
I was thinking Heart of Darkness then.
Yeah, it's very much that, actually.
Right.
So it's more me kind of responding to those cultural artifacts that I've absorbed. And I mean, there's a whole like genre that's just like come from Heart of Darkness, the book.
Really?
Yeah, like, books, films, everything.
Okay.
Like, of course, some of like my favorite films are made by people who basically just wanted to remake Heart of Darkness.
Okay.
Because it's such an elemental story.
Right.
So it's my attempt at that, basically.
Right. That's fascinating. I've never seen Apocalypse Now, which is really weird, because I love war films and I really make a point of watching the ones that are considered to be
It's fucking good.
top notch. I've got it on DVD, but I'm such a snob. I'm like, no, I want to watch it in 1080p. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I have to experience this in HD.
People are snobby about it.
Right.
There's about 5 versions, to be honest.
Right.
And
I've got the director's cut,
Yeah.
I think.
I think, is it Redux? Is that what it's called? It's
Oh,
like
maybe it's
4.5 hours long or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
no.
the thing is though, I've watched it like a bunch of times, and you have to just sit there and absorb it, really. Like, if you're going to watch it, you can't really watch it in bits. You're going to have to just sit there for like a long time and just let it wash over you, because, and I don't just mean that because like, oh, you'll forget what's happening if you like take a break. It's more like an experience film, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with my book.
Right.
It's more like it's dropping you in this world, and by the end of it, you're going to have the shivers, basically, because you're there.
Right.
It's like. So the plot of it is that the thing I'm writing is that the main character he's basically a kind of ex-German Navy from the Second World War, and he's kind of just fucked off. He basically deserted and then just like went AWOL, and he's just been traveling around the world for like the last 5 years.
Is he a Nazi on the run?
No.
Because a lot of them went to South America.
No, I know. And actually, it wasn't until I'd started really getting into it, I realized that might be where it was going, but it's not. That's not where it's going.
Okay.
Well, there might be a bit of a spoiler, but because people might read it thinking that's where it's going. Okay. But really, it's just he's wound up in South America, and he works on like merchant ships and stuff. So I did research into what it would be like being on a merchant ship in the 50s, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I didn't go on a merchant ship, but it was. You just sort of find out, read stuff and research it. So he ends up there, and then he ends up on a boat with a bunch of pretty disreputable people who've also sort of washed up there. And
so
then
they're a bit what's the word?
Piratical.
Yeah.
They're all just kind of they've just all washed up there, and various things happen. I won't go into what, but basically the kind of sort of what's it called? The major inciting incident. That's literally what it's called. The thing where everything goes tits up, basically. Right. And then from there, you're just kind of hanging on to the bumper until it ends. They basically get sort of cast into the wilderness, and they're just half dead. And then they come across a sort of a community in the jungle, and you kind of gradually find out who they are, this community. And it's not like a twist, but it's oh, okay, that's where you've gone with that. And then the main guy who has sort of, abandoned his society back home.
Have you named him yet?
Yes.
Are you able to, what are you?
His name, what's that thing from Fight Club?
Oh, well, the first rule of Fight Club.
His name was, fuck. And then he'll chant it when Meatloaf dies. His name was Robert Bolton. No, it's not that. No, his name is Peter Gans, and there's a reason I've chosen both those names.
Okay.
But so and then but the kind of the main theme of it is he's kind of escaping his past because he's ashamed of it. It's not like he really did anything, but he's ashamed of being a part of something. And this is very immediately post World War II, and Germany just went through fucking ridiculous stuff after World War II. Whole country was smashed down and built up again. So he doesn't really even know who he is anymore.
Right. So he's stateless in a way.
Stateless, yeah.
Right.
And then he finds this community, which is might as well be on Mars as far as he's concerned. No one knows he's there. And he kind of has to decide whether he's even going to leave, if he's just going to stay there and become one of them and become completely stateless and invisible.
Okay. So is there so what he's looking at is an opportunity at a redemption arc.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And he has to figure out whether this is time to get born again or stay on the run.
Yeah.
Which says something psychologically about the character, I think, doesn't it? Because if he chooses to stay, you'd assume that he's at peace with his decisions in his former life and he's ready to move on.
Yeah.
If he continues to be on the run,
where's he going?
There would be an element of self-flagellation.
Yeah, there is that,
right.
Definitely. Yeah, and you sort of get glimpses of his past, and it's he's definitely running, but he doesn't really even know what anymore. And there's
he's been running so long.
Yeah, he is.
He's got so far. He's not looked back for a while.
Yeah,
and now he's looked back. He can't see what he's running from.
Yeah,
and then he's well, this is all I know now.
Yeah.
Right. Sounds like a horrible cliche.
No.
This is all I know. It's the road.
The more I've thought about it, it probably is quite a cliched story, actually. I've probably taken quite a lot of things from things I like and then just made this you kind of, you make something that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So you want to see it.
Yeah.
I think I basically want to see a mishmash of a lot of things I like.
So you do it.
And I've done it.
But talent borrows, genius steals, they say. So
I'm pretty sure this story doesn't exactly exist like this.
Don't worry.
So, yeah.
And there's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So you might as well give it a shot.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you love it. And it sounds intriguing. I would. This is if I read this little premise on Netflix or something, I'd be like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah,
this sounds interesting. I am interested in. Did you ever play the game Spec Ops: The Line?
No.
Okay, so when you were talking about how Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now, which is basically the film is an adaptation of Heart of Darkness, isn't it? But Heart of Darkness is set in Africa, isn't it?
In Victorian times.
And Apocalypse Now is Vietnam. Spec Ops: The Line, the Xbox 360 game, is essentially Heart of Darkness as well, set in Dubai in a terrorist thing, and you make choices, and there's a really famous moment where you make the choice to call in this airstrike. On a I think, if I'm remembering it rightly, because I've only played it the one time, and I didn't realise until after I played it, because then sometimes what I do is I'd play the game, really enjoy it, and then be like, oh, what did the reviewers think? And then go back, and then you go, oh, I wish I'd known that before I played it. I wish I could put that and that together.
Yeah.
That would have been a more powerful moment.
Could have got more out of it.
Yeah. But it was a great game, and there's a moment, there's a really famous scene where I don't think you can see the enemy, but you know they're there. You get some intel, and you have to make a decision on that, which I guess is something that a lot of combat veterans or commanders know, is that at some point you have a partial picture of the battlefield, and you have to make a decision based on what you know.
Yes,
and it might go your way. It might have collateral damage, and so he calls in this like carpet bombing or like something. Maybe it's napalm or something really, or phosphorus. I think it's a phosphorus thing. Anyway, so then they go in and they realize that he realized that he got it wrong.
Oh, right.
And all he can see is like, it almost looks like Pompeii.
Yeah.
It's like civilians holding each other in like ash.
Yeah.
And they're like sculptures.
Yeah.
And there's this moment of like reckoning. Do you know what I mean? This moment in the main characters when you're like, oh God. And it's a really like...
Is this a cutscene, or is this you control it?
No, it's a cutscene.
Right.
It's a cutscene.
Okay.
But it's a big beat in the story.
Right, yeah.
And up until that point, I kind of felt like the game was quite good.
Yeah.
Not incredible mechanics-wise, and we're getting a bit nerdy here, but not like the most incredible game I'd ever played. But it was good. It was kind of like, all right, this is all right. I got it in a bundle on eBay. So I was like, this is worth the £3 I probably paid for it in the bundle, right? This is nice. This is fun. And then that moment happened, and I went, oh, we just reached up here to another level, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this has got something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil it, but it is a 10-year-old game or something at this point. But it gets to the end, and essentially it's like Heart of Darkness. It's like you've become what you were.
Yeah. What you were hunting or whatever.
You've become the object of your mission. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting how that is, because you said it's an elemental story, which I really wanted to come back to, because I wanted you to explain. I think I know what you mean, but I wanted you to explain what an elemental story meant. Is it like something where the raw materials of this story are so universal and interchangeable with each other that you can really create many, many great tales from the same...
Well, there's that, which is, I don't know how to describe it, but there's like the kind of the building blocks of a story. And there's a whole thing, like a whole like field of study about like how humans make stories to kind of like teach themselves or learn about themselves or something. I've got a friend who's an editor, like a literary editor, and she sort of worked with me a bit on this a couple of years ago, the book. And we talked a lot about that sort of, the fact that there is like, I can't remember what it is, but like there's a certain amount of stories in the world, like 6, and everything is just a variation on one of them. And I can't remember exactly what each of them are, but like, I mean, I think one of them's quest. I think one of them's like some like pure sort of redemption. One of them's probably just kind of like becoming a man or becoming a woman. Like it's, a sort of like, it's stories we've told ourselves for thousands of years, and everything that we write, it's like rock and roll, I guess. Everything's Chuck Berry at the end of the day.
It's Robert Johnson and Chuck Berry. Yeah.
Like it's someone had to make it first, and then it just works. So in terms of like the elemental story, I think with Heart of, maybe it's not like an elemental story, Heart of Darkness, but I think it is one of the most, it's one of the most kind of like, people have picked it up and done something with that, guy goes upriver looking for someone or something and stares into the heart of darkness because he goes into a sort of a realm that he's not really prepared for. And it's like there's no law, there's no order, it's just sort of, brutality. And I think that is one particular story type that's just been repeated over and over and over and over and over again. It's not just Apocalypse Now. There's like loads of films and books and stuff that replicate that.
Because that explores our inherent destructive.
Yeah. It's a very relatable human story. You can sort of see echoes of it in any war that's being depicted on the TV. It's like, why are we there? Why are we killing these people? What was the reason we're here again? It's like it's the kind of insanity of it.
Yeah.
Which my book isn't like about a war, but there's like the echoes of a war.
Right.
And he's trying to deal with it.
There's a personal war, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. He's fighting with who he was, basically.
Right. I like that stuff. I find that stuff really compelling. And there is a reason for that, isn't it? Because we're all I would hope we're all on the quest of self-improvement, self-development, learning from mistakes and using experience and things like that. I think Saving Private Ryan has a lot of parallels with that, and not in the sense that it's in the sense that they're going upriver to bring back this guy.
Yeah.
And what they see and what they experience on the way is, more darkness.
Yeah.
And then but that also poses a philosophical question, doesn't it? Or a question about ideals and principles, doesn't it? Is that, in how many men did they lose to bring this one guy back?
Yeah.
And you'd be like, if you just use maths or whatever, you'd be like, well, this is unacceptable attrition. But then you add the element of that, well, he's now a lady's only son.
Yeah.
Because his brothers have been killed. And then you go, okay, well, this changes the parameters of the mission, of the moral, whatever, the philosophy behind it. It's very interesting.
It's like, what's worse, one woman losing one son on that mission, or one woman losing all of her sons on all these missions? And it's like the way they depict that at the start, where it's like some general just kind of decides, well, there's one or the other, so we're going to go with that one. It's just a very sort of callous, well, she's had enough, let's maybe inflict it on some other people.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But those are the strange. I'd love to see a book about battlefield decisions that are like that, where you just sit there and you go, I'm sure there's many generals. I'm sure there's so many guys from World War II who wrote books, autobiographies or things like that, where you go, I can't believe you had to make the decision between that or that. And either one is going to haunt you for the rest of your days. You just have to pick which one is lesser on the shit scale. They're both
basically
sodden with chod.
It's
mad. It is mad. So elemental, and I guess like the Bible is like that in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And lots of religious stories are what you would call an elemental story.
I had about 10 years ago when I was at uni, I had a very stoner conversation with someone who was trying to tell me that Star Wars is basically the Bible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, and after a while I was like, I mean, you kind of have a point.
I've heard that.
It's like, he was also kind of saying like George Lucas came here from another planet and gave us Star Wars.
Oh dear.
It's like, but I could kind of, I reckon I wouldn't be surprised if George Lucas is or was a man of faith.
Grew up in some sort of devout household, but didn't.
Yeah, because there's a lot of faith in those films. Like, it's sort of like it's not very. They're not very cynical films. They're very sort of.
They're not.
There's
You're
good
right.
and there's bad, and you must attain good, and that's it.
Well, that is an elemental story, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just happens to have a very deep and rich world, which is interesting as well, because it's for as much as you can read the novels between the Clone Wars series 1 and 2.
Which I won't.
No one watches, right? But I mean, people watch them. But the main bulk of the Star Wars fans who watch the films every time they come out, they're not the ones who are also seeking out the lost episode of Clone Wars Series 4 or whatever. And there's all this lore, isn't there? And there's all this stuff, and it's so deep. But really, when it still comes down to is dark versus light. Literally the dark side.
Yeah.
The lightsaber. I just figured that out.
It's really on the nose.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, the Jedi's are all in their like white desert stuff. It's
I've got chills.
It?
It's weird. That's weird. The lightsaber. I just had like, oh my God. I just got Star Wars. But it is. It's a sci-fi Bible story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, maybe is like Methuselah or something. That's a joke. I don't think it's meant to be anything.
You just got cancelled, mate. You brought into this.
You jumped the shark with there. Why? That's a name we've. That's like the Voldemort of cultural references. You brought that into it.
Oh dear, Harry, cut that out.
Bleep when I say.
Yeah, every time we say bleep it out, Harry, and we'll see if the listener really knows. If you're a true Star Wars fan, you'll be sat there going, fucking hell, I bet that's they're talking about.
He who must not be named.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so back to your we've gone all across the galaxy. You almost got me started on Star Trek. Actually, and how I think Star Trek, when it's at its peak writing in terms of like Next Generation, is actually very intellectual.
Oh, I've heard that from loads of people. Yeah. I've never watched it because I don't really like sci-fi, but I've heard loads of people who aren't even that big into sci-fi say, no, it's very well written. It's about something. You know?
Yeah.
It's not just lasers and shit.
And I really like that idea of the fact that mankind have put all of their shitty differences aside and pulled all resources into space exploration, and they've done it. Yeah.
It's just taken for granted that we do that. Like,
right.
You just, eventually we'll help aliens around the galaxy.
Well, it's that, that we've gone, right, we need to explore space now, see what's out there as one.
Yeah.
As one.
Yeah.
And I do like that because that is such a...
It assumes that war is over on Earth, which is quite a radical idea.
Yeah. And that, but it also makes a comment on, again, that's not cynical either, because that is saying
this is possible.
If we come together as one, there is nothing we can't, nowhere we can't go.
I think that was the point. I think that was Gene Roddenberry's point, basically. Like he imagined something into being, and then was like, "Come on, why don't we try and do this? Even try and start getting to this because it's not a bad idea.
It's really not."
So,
but that show is so incredible. The things it's like inadvertently invented, like automatic sliding doors.
Yeah.
Although when they were on set, it was like two stagehands or runners or whatever go, or whatever they're doing, going up and down or whatever.
Yeah.
Like those weren't a thing when that aired, and that show only got popular after the moon landings.
Yes,
so originally it aired, and no one really gave a shit about it.
It's only 2 seasons, wasn't it? The first one? 2 or 3?
3, I think.
Yeah.
And no one really cared that much. And then the moon landing happened, and they started putting it on repeat, and then it blew up, which is interesting as well because it's that once humans had shown, oh, that's possible. Look what we've done.
Yeah.
Look what we've done. I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory of we didn't go to the moon or anything, because I'm sure we could if we wanted to now, whether we did then or not. I don't know. I'm not getting into it. I'd like to believe we did. Once we've shown the world or the youth of the world, oh, look, you can do this. This is the most inspiring thing ever. There's that thing you look out at night in your bed before you go to sleep. The moon, wondering how far away it is, how big it is. Is it made of cheese? Do you know what I mean? Is that a hole? Is it a crater? Is it a volcano? What is it? Is it a big telescope? Whatever, on the moon. All this wonder. Oh, we've gone there, we've done it, and you can see it. Then Star Trek is like, oh, great, I get this now. It's interesting that the moon landings had to be like, no, this is okay to dream this big.
It was achievable.
Yeah,
it was conceivable that we could do it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like mobile phones, the flip phone.
Yeah,
that was Star Trek.
Oh, just to have a unit in your hand and multi-use and do stuff with it. Yeah.
I don't know about stun guns, but they had like switch your faders to stun.
I feel like the whole teleporting thing might have been quite novel, actually.
Yeah, they're getting into quantum stuff there.
I think that was quite new. which now is just like such a normal thing,
right?
In all sci-fi,
but that was, it was almost weird. It's almost strange how much that show conceptualized things that are now real, like the holodeck.
Yeah,
I mean, we have holograms of Tupac at whatever Coachella.
I know.
Also, that whole Enterprise thing of sitting there and talking to someone on the screen.
Yes,
I was doing that not that long ago in here, chairing a council meeting, talking to people on a screen, like William Shatner. Weird, man. Yeah, it all comes true. Yeah, and then what else? What else have they got? That's it's the warp drive thing. Which isn't that they're going through space super fast. It's that they're displacing
space and pulling it behind
it, creating some sort of void slipstream thing.
That's pretty brave to kind of like put that on a pretty mainstream TV show and be like, okay, get your head around this, kids, and then we're going to see William Shatner bang an alien. But like, but you know, the science is there.
Spoiler, I haven't got to that episode yet.
What, one? Thereafter.
It is great. It is great. Oh, first interracial kiss on TV as well.
Yeah.
Just paving the way.
Paving the way.
And Star Trek gets a really weird rap. And I'm like...
I think because of its fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that... Yeah. 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 But it's... You know, there's some real substance in there. And the Borg and everything, the hive mind. And like, it's subversive.
I mean, I don't think I've ever watched an episode of Star Trek, honestly, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because that's just entered the cultural slipstream, hasn't it? It's there. It's a touch point for not just sci-fi, but all television and storytelling. So, you know, I've absorbed it.
I'm pretty sure when we were in the height of the pandemic and everyone had masks on, people, you know, the people that were the anti-maskers who were trying to figure out any way they could to shame people who wore masks.
Yeah.
Oh, got your muzzle on. Stuff
I'm sure. Oi, mate, ditch the muzzle.
I'm sure, like, oh, he's one of the Borg. It's like thrown around. It's just part of the lexicon, isn't it? Part of the zeitgeist. Very strange. But yes, back to your book, your novel. So where are you now? You're almost at the end.
I'd say I'm about 10% off the end of it.
Okay.
And that was another thing, actually. I've never finished something before. So I didn't want to fuck it up. So I basically took a break, got into something else, and I'm going to sort of like steel myself to finish it. Because I think it might be quite hard, actually. Like harder than...
Right, to know when to stop.
Yeah, really easy to start a book.
Right.
Middle is a bitch. But the end is like...
Well, the middle's like, okay, you had this great concept.
The middle's everything.
Now do something with it.
Yeah.
Like, beyond this character's cool, here's the backstory.
Yeah.
The skeletal elements
Get
of it.
to the end, basically, without it just being like end now.
Right.
Yeah. Which is a short story, basically. But so, I mean, I know how it's going to end, but like, it's constructing it in a kind of narrative fashion. Because like, if quite often I think in virtually every like narrative fiction thing, the end sort of has a life of its own, doesn't it? It has its own sort of propulsion, and it's like things can get really messy and crazy, and then it just sort of ends. Or it can be a kind of like a logical conclusion, which I think would be quite hard to do because it's come out of my head. So I'm not sure it is logical. It's just like, I just think that's what he's going to do. But I might be wrong. Maybe that character wouldn't do that.
Right.
But who else is going to know? So I that's what I mean. I'm sort of thinking about it, and I want to get it right, basically.
And he's a real person in your head, obviously, at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you've created... You've procreated.
I've procreated an invisible friend.
You know, we might be the only being... You know, someone said to me not that long ago to me, it was like, oh, the brain has, you know, named itself, which made me go... like,
yes,
oh, my God. The brain has named itself. It cuts itself open and studies itself.
Yeah. That is a profound thought, actually.
This is mad. I
thought of that. Yeah.
But we might be the only creatures who you have given life to something that doesn't have any physical matter.
No. And isn't necessarily a part of me either. Right. I think it probably is, because I think it's quite hard to write a protagonist that's not at least got something of you in it.
Right. Is he a version of you that you kind of wish you
I don't
were?
know.
The Nazism, the Nazi history aside, obviously.
Damn, I really wish I'd been to South America in the 50s to find my fellow Nazis. No, I think the stuff that's in him that's me is, I think there's a big theme in it about home.
Right.
And actually there's a big theme in my second one about home. And I feel like if I write more stuff, I think home is going to be quite a big, like, the way you think about home and what it means to you, and it can be quite complicated. I had quite a complicated sort of view of home for a long time growing up. I didn't really feel like I fit in, really.
Right.
And then I even I migrated at one point. I moved to Canada for a couple of years. And that was literally like, I don't want to go back to the UK, basically.
Right.
But then while I was there, towards the end of those 2 years, I got like intensely homesick.
Right.
Like having dreams about like the countryside and stuff, and like food and just like stuff about this country that I'd largely forgotten about when I was there.
Right.
And I think that was quite a big psychological thing for me. And I started to at least think seriously about writing when I came back, because I sort of like processed that.
Right.
And it was like, I've almost kind of gone full circle and realized I didn't know what I was missing the whole time. Okay. And now I'm back in this country. I've enjoyed it, like loved it. You know, right. I don't really want to leave again. So I feel like he's kind of going through a similar thing, and he may end up home one day and just have to move on from that sort of trauma he went through. But not that I went through trauma, but like I don't know. Yeah, you're always sort of reaching for something else.
And does the definition of home, like I think everyone thinks that home is like going back to the podcast I did with Eleanor Talbot, home to her always felt like Froome, even though she'd never really spent any time here, really.
Like she'd found a home.
I think that was where she said home was. And that she loved Canada, but it never fully felt like home. And it's strange, isn't it? Because I think we believe that home is a permanent thing, but perhaps home can be an ever-changing thing, right?
Yeah.
Because like when you're in love, that feels like home. Like they feel like home.
Yeah.
Right? And when you miss that person, it's like, it's akin to like homesickness.
Yeah.
If you kind of like really like, you're having a shit day or something and you really miss them, or they're away or whatever. So that's an interesting thing. It's it's home is where the heart is, isn't it?
There's a reason someone wrote that. It's kind of true in a way.
But it is interesting because it's an elemental part of human nature or storytelling or it's just of our being, of our experience on Earth, is like, where is home?
I think I'm definitely saying in the book that like on some fundamental level, he's kind of broken because he's kind of disavowed his home. Because he feels like he has to. Yeah. But he hasn't got anywhere to go. Right. So he's just sort of wandering.
But we always find those people the most interesting, I think, don't we? Because, you look at like old rock bands like the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. And, they've built their reputation on, obviously the name is on the nose there, but they've built a reputation on being road dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
And always on the move and never in one place for very long.
Yeah.
And that, for a lot of people, is so alien.
Yeah.
That there's a fascination with it, isn't it? This sort of bohemian vibe. It's very interesting how we latch on to the idea of home and roots, and it's interesting. It's interesting. So anything I've been inspired by, if I've ever been like, oh, that'd be a great little film or TV show, or maybe one day I would write a book or something, it's always the ending, it seems, that I get. I get the concept of some sort of ending.
Of the thing that inspired you.
And then I think, oh yeah, well, how do you start this thing with being informed of A to B? Yeah. Well, it's ABC, right? Yeah. You start at A, you know that C, you know what C is. How do you mold and sculpt that along the way till you get to that payoff moment, or that glory, or that sad moment or whatever. So it's interesting. I wonder how many, I wouldn't say I'm a writer or anything like that, because I'm not, but I wonder how many people approach a character or a book or a story, whatever, from the beginning or the end. It's very, I don't know.
I mentioned my friend earlier, Abby, who she's a young adult editor. So young adult, the genre.
Young adult fiction.
Fiction, yeah. So she's like a professional editor of that. So I went to her with like the bare bones of the story, and like I think I'd written like 20 pages or something, and basically said, can you help me? Because I don't know how to sort of like, carry on, basically. And the best thing she told me, it was going back to the whole thing about the story, like once you kind of realize that human stories are like one of 5 or 6 things, and they're all kind of similar anyway, that kind of demystifies it a lot.
Right.
It's not bad to think of it as beginning, middle, end. I think I was kind of I think I was trying to like reinvent the wheel quite a lot in my early days. Once you realize not only do you not need to do that, no one really wants you to do that because they're not going to relate to it.
No, and the biggest things in pop culture aren't ever the most intricate pieces of genius, are they? I mean, a lot of it can be classed as genius. A lot of the Beatles stuff can be classed as genius, but there's not necessarily super intricate.
I think if something deviates from that kind of DNA too much, it immediately becomes deemed experimental.
Right.
And it may not even have been intended to be experimental. Like, let's just fuck around with this. The person may just not even know how to write a conventional story. But the way we read it is like, well, that makes no sense whatsoever. It's just a jumble of stuff. So that must be experimental. That person may have had an idea, that narrative may work for them, but for the rest of us, it's, it doesn't really exist.
Right. Because I was complaining to Harry earlier. I was like, every time I'm on Instagram, all I see is something about this Squid Game film. Is it a show? TV show?
It's a TV show, yeah.
TV show. I'm seeing so much of it at the moment that this always happens. That I'm like, nah, fuck this. I'm not watching this.
I am. Yeah.
Everyone.
I'll wait a year before
shut up about it and I'll watch it and I'll make my own mind up about it. But we were talking, I don't know necessarily the whole premise, I haven't seen it, but we were talking about how it's actually not a very original premise. It's not something that we haven't seen before in things like Battle Royale or Hunger Games or even elements of the Saw films or whatever. And it's just that it's done in a slightly different take that's captured the zeitgeist right now visually.
It's the sort of window dressing of it is something we haven't seen before, but the bare bones of it, from the sounds of it, we've seen it 100 times.
Right. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's such a big thing right now. Like it's almost like people don't want...
They don't want new things.
They don't want new stuff, or they don't want to be challenged.
Yeah.
Or they want something that feels familiar.
Yeah.
Or not too... It's weird, isn't it? There's a comfort.
I mean, I have to say, I get that. I think I've expressed that with my book in that I think I'm honestly trying to make a sort of homage to a load of stuff I like.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm trying to make something new. I think I'm just trying to say, think about that, but from this angle.
Yeah.
And again, like once I realized that's what I was doing, it made it a lot easier to write because I could just concentrate on writing and not overthink it. And with lots of my other projects in the past, I feel like I have tried to be too smart and sort of make a new kind of narrative. And it's like, there's no point.
So do you create this other writer in your head that's the other, that represents an amalgamation of all the other writers that you know of, and you go, what would they do? I'm not going to do that. So you have this almost like this faceless being that you're trying to outright in your mind that represents the status quo.
I've never heard it expressed like that before. I'm not sure I am doing that. I think when I write, it's my voice. It's how I want to write.
I meant, sorry, like previously, not now.
Right.
But previously, when you said you were trying to make things are too complicated, or was that what you were seeing? You were like, how do I outfox?
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't sort of know. I was probably not old enough, to be honest. I didn't sort of like know how to kind of outdo somebody who was like an expert at their game, and I didn't really want to put the work in. So I'm more comfortable now just writing something which on the face of it is fairly conventional, but I just try and write it as well as I possibly can, and then I'll be happy with it.
Okay.
And then maybe someday down the line, I will try and write something genuinely experimental. But I'm not there yet.
Yeah, it must have been a weight off when you realised, actually, I don't have to outright anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
I just have to earnestly tell my story the best I possibly can.
Yeah. And as well, you get a satisfaction from, okay, I've not like beaten this person. Not that should ever be a part of it, but like there is something of that in there.
You got to have a little competitiveness, haven't you? And that's what I meant with this kind of figure that this other thing that represents the other writers in your head, is that you do want to sort of like outdo, like when you're writing music or something, everyone's got some generic unknown faceless band or drummer in their head, I think, where you're like, oh well, I wonder what that represents the median level of that thing, and then you go, how do I go that one step further than they would?
I also realized that through reading, like, because I read like constantly, and I've got like hundreds of favorite writers and stuff, and I realized that like I think you could probably categorize like who is a good writer over who isn't. But once you get to a certain level, like it's not so much their quality, it's just like it's their voice, it's what they're saying.
Right.
Like one writer, if they're really good enough, probably won't sound like a lot of other writers. That doesn't necessarily mean they're better, but that's just who they are. And I think I like that because I can sort of say, the way I write is to try and be quite original with the words I use and the structure and everything. And also not be too sort of like, try and make it sort of like readable as well. Like I had a really bad thing where I used to just write like sentences that would be like 10 lines long, and I had to really discipline myself to not do that and just try and get everything into like 8 words and make those words count. Right. But I like to think that if you read that, and if you read like another one after that, you'd be able to realize they're the same writer, because it's not me copying someone, it's you pulling something out, and that's how I write.
And that comes with output, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because your voice is something, it's like a stamp, isn't it? So you have to make your mark with consistency over a few examples, I'd imagine.
I've honed what I do a lot, and I've got rid of a lot of stuff I didn't like about my writing, but I think there is a sort of a voice there that it's going to be hard for me to change, because that's just my writing voice.
And why change it?
Because that's me. That's what I want to write.
Because there's so many bands that like, you hear their first album and you're like, oh yeah, this is good, but this is a derivative of X, Y, Z. And you hear the second album and you're like, oh, okay, now this is in the third album, and you're like, okay, this is them. Or there's singers and they find their voice.
Yes, yeah.
And they find their thing that makes them them. That's great that you already know what that is.
Yeah, I think so.
But you've obviously, we won't know about that process because those are the books that haven't been released or finished or whatever. Yeah. That's good. That's what you have to do. That's your due diligence. Yeah. Is a D in it?
Due diligence.
Due diligence. Yeah. It's fantastic. I love it. I very, very rarely read any fiction at all.
Right.
And if I do, I rarely read in terms of like sitting and reading.
Yeah.
If I do, it's normally autobiographies, because I am just so fascinated in why people do what they do and how their fucking head works and shit. But if I do read fiction, it's normally graphic novels and stuff, because I don't know, I like pictures. Yeah. But there was something that our friend Charlie, who's a guitarist in Sick Ones, he said he reads a lot of fiction, and he said something to me that really made me really changed the way I looked at it. Because I thought, well, I watch a film for a story.
Yeah.
And because of my ADHD, I do find sitting down and applying myself to a book, which is just one sense. Of my senses, quite difficult. But when I'm in there, I do enjoy it, right? Yeah. But it's that idea of like forcing the focus in that I almost like procrastinate on it seriously all the time. But he said to me that when you read fiction, he said that you really get to understand how the writer thinks.
Yeah.
So you get a window into their psychology. Yeah. And I was like, that was like a little penny drop moment where I was like, oh, that is That is really compelling. It'd almost be worth me picking up some classic books.
Yeah.
And reading and just being like, maybe like Stephen King and just being like, what is up with this guy? Do you know what I mean? Like, not even necessarily the story, but like, it's born of a mind, isn't it? It's born of one mind usually.
I sometimes feel like the writer is kind of like an invisible character in the scene, and they're speaking to you and they're narrating what's happening.
Right.
And that, I see what you mean. It's like, it's the writer's voice. It's them transmitting a story to you.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe they're even a part of it. I've read a couple of books where it's written so well, it almost seems autobiographical, but you know it's not because of the sort of the nature of it.
Right.
You know, it's like clearly a sort of a, I don't know, like a fantasy or an adventure or something. But there's just something about the detail they go into about stuff. It's like, where is this coming from?
Right.
And I know that they haven't got that from something else because it's not like a classical derivative thing.
Right.
So I got that with, did you ever see that film, The Beach?
Yes.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
I've seen the film. I have not read the book.
The book is, I mean, I read the book when I was like a teenager, I think. So I don't know how it holds up. But one thing I do remember about it was like the really strange detail he went into about quite sort of
trivial things.
Right. That by the midpoint, I basically felt like it was him. It was just him telling you about what he'd done on his like huge crazy adventure. And that was really affecting. Like I realized you could do that. I don't know if that was his intention because I've not really read any of his other stuff, but that was a bit of a mind blow that like it doesn't have to be a kind of once upon a time there was blah blah. It's like, okay, this happened to me last year. Like another one who does that is, even though it is, do you know Charles Bukowski?
Yes. I've watched loads of documentaries about him, read some of his poetry and stuff, but I haven't ever sat down and read.
So he wrote 6 books, which were 5, I think there's 6. 5 of them were basically autobiographical, but I think he embellished quite a lot of it. And it's all about like his life and his upbringing and stuff. I mean, he's very clear about saying like that the character has a different name. If you know anything about Charles Bukowski, he says things about the character that aren't like his life story. So it's like it's basically like he's put a fictional character into his own life, possibly because it was too traumatic to write about it the way, because he had a pretty fucked up life.
Right.
And so he's kind of just relaying all these stories, and you're not really sure which ones are true and which ones aren't, but the voice is the same.
Right.
So
but that's
kind of works.
That's mythical, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's kind of...
And I think later on he was sort of buying into his own myth to an extent.
Right.
But I think with his early stuff, it was like, yeah, this happened to a guy who's not me 5 years ago.
I do find that psychology quite fascinating because it's not the genre of self-help, but it's therapy, isn't it? Yeah. So it's
oh, you definitely work through some stuff if you're writing. Yeah, that's true.
So it's definitely, with him, it's almost looking upon his trauma in the third person.
Yes.
And analysing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It is fascinating. I don't read enough, and it does bother me, but it's like I almost have this like...
Yeah.
Oh, what sort of get a lot from books, and I just don't.
Is there anything about it that sort of intimidates you at all? Like the size of a book, or like
because I know that the book is this big, and my attention span is this big.
Yeah. I'm sure I could find you some good stuff that's really not.
I love
much more than that.
I love autobiographies. I can get hooked into them,
right? Regardless of length, or yeah. Okay.
Basically, it's strange. It's very strange. It must be some sort of mental block.
Oh,
but I respect it.
Yeah,
like a lot, and I've loved this conversation because it's a creative branch of it's a branch of creativity that has a lot of like I'd like to be able to do it.
Yeah,
or I think. Do you believe that everyone has a story in them? Everyone has a book in them?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That's a very non-cynical view, and I feel like I'm quite cynical a lot of the time.
Yeah,
even to the point where sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, Andy, you cynical fuck. Who hurt you? Right, a little bit. But if I then really think about it, I think, no, everyone does have a story, don't they?
Yeah. Well, they have their own story for one thing,
right?
But like, Yeah, I think.
And then the cynic in my head is like, yeah, I don't want to hear that then.
It's very
Who
true.
wants that? Right? I'm an asshole.
What was it you said on that zoo thing? I think you asked me that question, and I was yes, and then I was like, yeah, everyone's got a book in them. You were like, well, some maybe got a leaflet,
Pamphlet. At least, I mean, that could count as a story, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I should read more. I should read more.
Although, would you not say you might have a story in you, but it wouldn't necessarily be a book that you write to do it? I mean, surely, you're a musician, you hang out with musicians. I mean, you're all saying something. Is there not an aspect of that to it? You're more suited to producing that.
I guess we could go into that like pretentious realm of, my drums and me communicating, my story.
Well,
is that what you were getting at?
Kind of,
yeah.
I mean, do you not feel a little bit like that?
Yeah,
because you're putting something of you into it.
But the really like logical,
you're not a drumming monkey.
No, I'm not. So the really,
if it's an intense song and the song is about something intense, you would join in the intensity.
Yeah, but I'm not writing the drums to the emotion, to the vibe of the song, because a lot of the time with the Sick One stuff is the lyrics came at the end.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not writing to order, if you know what I mean. I'm not writing to. This is the bit when he's saying.
So it really is
something
like
about being depressed in an artistic way or whatever. It's literally just how I'm responding to the guitar parts Charlie's writing.
Okay,
or whatever.
fair enough.
I guess if you listen to the drums. It's weird, isn't it? It's a strange one. It is a strange one. The really angry bits and the bits that are like a bit sort of like wonky and tug on the time and the intensity, that is me. That is definitely my voice. That's like my aggression.
Yeah.
But also a part of how my brain works.
Yeah.
I've said ADHD a bunch in this, and I think this because recently I've started this new job in this school with kids with ADHD and autism and stuff, and I'm seeing it. You can see it. I'm surrounded by it all day. It's like I'm in this place where it's normalized, and it's been really.
That must be eye-opening.
Eye-opening. I feel like I'm in a place where actually I can just be me.
I was going to say, is it the first time you haven't really felt you had to fit in?
Yeah, I just let my freak flag fly.
Yeah.
You know what they're going to go? Huh? You know what I mean? I was like, you do that. I saw you do that on the playground. You know what I mean?
That must be awesome.
It's really lovely. But yeah, so those moments of like where it's all just like weird and whatever. That would be parts of how my brain works.
Right.
But it's weird because the rational part of my brain is like, well, all drummers can play 4/4.
Yeah.
So they're not what you're saying with a 4/4 beat. But it's all about I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? But yeah. So do you know how you're ending this book?
The first one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Are you afraid to commit it to paper?
I'm cautious about. I think I'm tweaking it in my head, and I'm cautious about tweaking it too much and not writing it, because then I'm back to the original sin of not writing and thinking it.
Right. Can you tweak so much that you thin out something and you go...
You accidentally take something good out.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa, that was powerful. Whereas now I'm reading it again and...
I'm also kind of scared of writing it, literally writing the last sentence and then being like, was that it?
Right.
Because I'm reading it as I'm writing it.
Yeah.
Because that would be fucking weird. I don't even know how I'd deal with that.
Or releasing it, and then one night you go, that's how I should have ended it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're in bed and you're just like, and then you... Sean,
aliens.
Sean, do you think maybe that would have been the better ending? Oh, for fuck's sake. Fuck. God damn it. That would haunt me.
Yeah.
I'm haunted by...
I don't want to be haunted, Andy, by my story I came out of my head.
The ghost of...
The ghost of stories past. I don't want it.
God.
I got enough on a plate to deal with.
You'll be visited by the ghost of... What is it? What's that thing where it's really obvious, when the story really obviously gives you the thing on a spoon? Expedition or something? Exposition.
Yeah.
The second ghost is exposition. Oh, I don't really have to explain why I'm here, do I? Or maybe I do, because I'm exposition. Anyway,
yeah, all that.
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I thought this was what was going on. Thanks, exposition.
Yeah.
Ghost of exposition. Where were we before that?
Knowing how I'm going to end it.
That's right.
Yeah.
It just coming to you when it's too late. I'm haunted by EPs I never got to finish.
Yeah.
With bands that have broken up and musicians that are off not being musicians now.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. There are still moments I think, fucking hell, that song had so much potential, and I just wish that we just at least finished it.
Yeah. My worst is I'm not like haunted by stuff I didn't finish, because I feel like if I didn't finish it, there was a reason. It probably wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
But there was one thing I did. I wrote a couple of screenplays, actually, film screenplays, like feature-length ones, because I did a film degree, which is where I learned some of the bare bones of like narrative and stuff. And I wrote a feature-length screenplay for my final piece, and that's the first thing I've ever actually finished, which I felt amazing after I did that. That was a huge thing for me. And that was like 10 years ago. When I was in Canada, I wrote another one, and I almost finished it, and then the laptop died. And that is gone now.
That haunts you?
Kind of, yeah. Because I could probably write it again, actually. It's all still there, ticking away.
For as long as it haunts you, you'll still be able to recreate that,
Yeah,
I think
so.
Because
that's why I can still remember it.
Yeah, it's that part of your brain that's like, we're not letting go of that. Yeah. But you also now have to figure out that in a book or 2-3's time, when you go and do it again, it'll probably be like way better than the original.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I think so.
So maybe that happened for a reason.
Yeah.
But also you need to, how old are you?
31.
Right, you need to weigh up, how much mortality do you think you've got? Do you know what I mean? Because you don't want to be, we don't know how long we've got.
How many books you have in you.
Right.
Yeah.
How many
screenplays.
But also, like, don't leave it too long.
No.
Not saying you're going to die soon, you're a young man. But it's also that as well, isn't it? Because it's there.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's nowhere else.
Yeah.
And that's frightening.
It's like it's on pause in my head.
Right.
Yeah.
And at some point that will get, the itch for that will get so much that you go, I need you out of my head now.
Yeah.
I just need this gone.
Will.
And once I've written it, you'll like purge yourself of it.
Yeah.
As Harry sometimes says to me, you need to free up that in CPU.
That is a channel into your brain.
So just write it down, Andy. Free up the CPU. Set a reminder for it.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So right now it's sat in your random access memory.
Random access memories, my memory bank.
And when you die, it's gone.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you need to.
Like it never happened.
Yeah. So as long as you're booted,
yeah,
it's in the RAM.
Yeah.
But we know that more you put in the RAM, the slower things get. So get it out of there.
I know. I'm going to do it.
All right.
I'm going to do it.
Great place to finish off.
Yeah.
Best of luck with the book. I'm not going to ask you for a title or anything else like that now.
That's fine.
Amazing. That was great.
Awesome. Thank you very much.